And for today, we have our Kids Comics Unite industry interview, which we do every couple of months. And I am super excited about today's event because we are combining two creators with their agent. We did this once last year and it was a complete blast. It was Rachel Orr and Kevin Sherry. So fascinating. And so during these industry interviews, what I like to focus on a lot is creative journey. So how did you get into making comics in the first place? How did you find your agent? How did you work on your pitch package together? How did you get your publisher? In this particular case, though, it's especially interesting because you got two book deals. I mean, I don't know if it was at the exact same time or we will find that out. I don't know any of the details, but that is, I mean, how you are managing to do all of that. I want to know. So even normally we focus on creative journey, and that is definitely what we will talk about in today's interview. But I am determined to talk a lot also at the end about production schedules and time management and work-life balance, because these guys have a lot on their plate. So, and I know that's something that all of us are always thinking about. So I'm going to introduce very bare bones, and then I'm going to ask each of you to do a little more detailed introduction. Actually, what I should first do probably is mute everybody, and then I'll ask Dan and Erica and Jason if you can unmute yourself. Okay. And and the other thing I should say is that we always have Q&A. So definitely you can, anytime a question occurs to you, you can put it in the chat. And at the end of the more formal part of the interview, which as you can tell, we don't do anything very formally in here, I'll open it up and you guys can ask directly questions of Erica and Dan and Jason. So our speakers today are Dan Abdo and Jason Patterson. I said it right. I didn't say James Patterson. And they are working on two separate graphic novel series. So one of them is Barb the Last Berzerker, a series with Simon & Schuster, which is a middle grade graphic novel series. And another, oh yay, look, they have the books up there in the screen. And the other one is Blue, Berry, and Pancakes, which is an early reader series with First Second. And then their agent, Erica Rand Silverman, is here. She is from Stimola Literary. Did I say that right?
Stimola.
Stimola, okay, Stimola Literary. And she's been an agent for more than 10 years, is that right?
More than 15 years now.
More than 15 years, okay. And she represents a whole bunch of amazing people, including several members of Kids Comics Unite, like Shanda McClaskey, Lala Watkins, I think. And then also we are reading one of your clients' books for our April book club inside of Kids Comics Studio, which is Donut Feed the Squirrels by Mika Song. Yes.
So good.
So this is just a wonderful event. So I'm just gonna first ask Dan and Jason, could you say a little bit about yourselves, how you got to be doing what you're doing now, and then we can have Erica say a little bit about herself.
Yeah, sure. Jason, do you want to take this?
Sure. Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. This is really exciting. Dan and I have been in comics not that long, but we have loved comics forever. And we met in high school. And really what brought us together as friends was drawing comics in the back. There's like an art room, and then there's like the advanced art room, which was like a closet attached to the art room in high school. And that's where Dan and I hung out. I mean, we kind of came from different parts of the high school. Like Dan was cooler and skateboarded, and I was like student council, kind of a nerd. So but we both loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and X-Men and Lord of the Rings. So comics really kind of brought us together, and it's kind of stuck since, you know, we're dads now, and you know, we've kind of lived a lot of chapters together, which has been totally awesome.
Yeah, totally. It's like we kind of went off. It's like we started drawing comics together, and then we actually both ended up going to Rhode Island School of Design, where we studied like film and animation and got kind of made our way into like advertising and like television stuff. And then like kind of came back to comics. It's like now we're back in comics, and it's like it kind of feels like this is what we're supposed to be doing. It's like we're just having so much fun with it, and it's been really this awesome journey.
So my background's actually in education. I was a high school teacher for about a decade here in Manhattan. I was an English teacher and a theater teacher. And I think I really just wanted to read books with kids and talk about how they felt, make them feel better, create community. I didn't really want to grade papers or like prepare them for the Regents exam. So I left and started working for a veteran agent in children's publishing named George Nicholson, who ended up passing away in 2016. But he had been in publishing, when he was still using a typewriter and drinking vodka at lunch, when he went for meetings. He started paperbacks, and I learned the entire industry through him. I thought it was a layover, and I was so thrilled to just be like stuffing envelopes after teaching, a whole class. I was like, this is amazing. But then I got bit by the bug, and I was at Sterling Lord Literaristic at that time. After George passed away, I moved over to Stimola Literary Studio to learn under Rosemary Stimola. And when I came over, I said, I really just want to do illustrated books. And that might change as my boys get older. I have an 8 and a 10-year-old. And she was like, you do whatever you want to do. So that is now what I do. I do mostly picture books, board books, graphic novels, comics, early readers. And the occasional adult in wellness, social, emotional learning, and mental health has always been very important to me. So that's been about 15 years now, and very pleased to have bestsellers on my list, an Eisner nominated award winning clients, and other ALA award recognitions. And it's a wonderful industry, Janna, as I know you know, to be a part of.
So I definitely want to hear about how you got connected to each other. But before I ask that question, I want to dig a little bit more, Dan and Jason, into the transition from your animation work in advertising. And do you remember when you started taking seriously the idea that you wanted to create graphic novels for kids? Was it like an epiphany? Was it something that slowly built up over time? How long ago was it? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. I'll start this one off. So we have spent like the past almost 15 years or so as animation directors for this company called Hornet Inc. And part of like how we teamed up with Hornet, they're another little animation company out of Manhattan, was that we were like coming up with ideas for shows. Like we came up with this idea for Rocket Monkeys that we ended up selling, that was on like Teletoons in Canada and Nicktoons all over the place. And we were like constantly pitching shows and like, oh, this could be a fun idea, or this might be a fun idea for a feature and stuff like that. And we would get pretty far down the process, and then like it would inevitably not go anywhere, And so we had like all of these ideas and all these characters and all these stories, but like no one could see them. So I remember we sat down, we were actually in Grey Dog, which is this awesome little sandwich place like in the West Village, and we were like, we should just do this, like our next idea, but we'll just make it a book, we'll make it a comic, and we won't ask anybody permission, like we won't check to see if this is the right thing for the marketplace, because that's what was like a lot of the stuff that kept on coming back to us, right? Which is like, no, we're not doing girl stuff right now, or we're not doing space stuff, or we're not doing this, or we're not doing that. So we were like, this is just something that we're interested in, that we're just going to make. And it's like that kind of blew the whole thing open for us. It's like we just started making stuff and getting a response to it.
Yeah.
When was that again? Oh, sorry.
Well, no, yeah, totally. It's like we would make pitch books, which is something you take in, we'd go out to LA and we'd meet with people at Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network or HBO. And we're like, well, we're making pitch books. Maybe we can just make books. It's like we're doing a lot of the thinking and we're doing the character stuff. And yeah, like Dan was saying, they're like, no, I don't think this will work. And Dan are like, I think it would, we really think it would work. And we were like, well, to make an animated show, you really need a big team of people. Just making a commercial, a 30-second commercial is like 20 people, and a show is a huge investment. I mean, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. It's an enormous kitchen, right? But one of the things that Dan and I have always loved is just hanging out and drawing, and that's something we did in high school. And we're like, well, let's just make a let's just make a book. How hard could it be? And it turns out it's really, really, really hard.
It's a lot harder than it looks.
It's a lot harder. But we put together this primordial blueberry and pancakes. And at that time it was just blue and berry and pancakes. And we started taking some meetings with some agents, because we heard you have to have an agent. And luckily we found Erica, because Erica is, she is a total storyteller too. And she had all these she knew the market, like we did not know the market whatsoever, but she also had amazing notes for us to kind of shape this lump of clay we'd made that was like, it's funny, the first story was, it was Barry and Pancakes go to meet their old uncle who's sick in a hospital bed. And Erica was like, I don't know if you want to tell a children's story with somebody sick in a hospital bed. So the sick uncle became Blue, and he's a friend, and they all live in the same treehouse. But it was great. I mean, I feel like if you're, starting out as a writer, it's so good to bounce your ideas off of other people. Like, I think that's such an important step.
So when you said we were taking meetings with agents, I think that sounds really glamorous, I'm sure, to some of the people here on the Zoom call. So can you explain what you mean by that? Were you just cold pitching people and they would ask you to come meet with them, or what do you mean?
I went back in my email to see if I could find the original email you sent me, Dan, but for some reason, our emails only go from the first time we met, like in person, when we all the three of us got together. I can't find anything before that. Like, it exists, right? It wasn't like,
Yeah, well, it's funny.
It's not in my email.
It was a little bit of both. Like, I actually remember the way that we got in touch with Erica was through a friend. Like, so my friend Rachel Hewlin, who published this book, Flying Henry, which was like a picture book or something. I was talking to her, and I was talking to her about, like, getting into books and comics and stuff like that. And her agent was like, oh, he should call this person. He should call Erica. So it was like a friend who was in the business had an agent, and that agent was like, this is the best agent who's doing kid stuff. But then there were like other agents that we were just cold calling. And then we had another kind of crazy thing, which was that this all was happening around like 2016. Just totally randomly. What's that?
I don't think I went back far enough.
I know, it's been a while
17.
now.
Yeah.
Totally randomly, I was on Humans of New York, which is this like Instagram, Facebook thing. And on that, I was talking about books and cartoons and stuff like that. And like 100 agents got in touch with me through that one weird little thing. So it's like a lot of it was just like reaching out to these, responding to these people who were like, this sounds cool. Like, I'd be into this, or, that'd be like, this sounds interesting. So I think it was kind of like a mix of all three. It was cold calling, it was connections through friends, and it was also just like making things and putting it out there. And this Humans of New York thing kind of got our stuff out in like a bigger way.
Wow, that's super interesting. So Erica, can you say a little bit from your perspective as an agent? Do you remember the first time you saw Dan and Jason's work or their outreach? Like, do you remember what you were thinking?
At the time, so it was 2016. So my boys, so that's how many years ago is that? That's 6 years ago. So my youngest was 8. They were little still, and we were reading Mo Willems' Piggy and Elephant, and there wasn't much else out there at the time, right? Like that space now has a lot happening, but there was nothing else happening. And I had already sort of recognized that and was looking for more. And then Dan and Jason sort of popped up. And I think, Dan, you had actually shared with me something that we haven't even dealt with yet, like an idea for a project that we haven't even gotten to. But in a meeting together, I was talking about this space that I saw this hole in the market, and did they have any ideas? And that was where I think Blueberry and Pancakes, right? It was my little one who was like, oh, blueberry pancakes. I was like, oh my God. This is really, But yeah, so it was a hole in the market. It was clearly so talented, and we hit it off, and just so fun to be around. I really dig how Dan and Jason riff off each other. I really enjoy listening to them create story in the moment and tell jokes in the moment, and to be able to be a part of that was so satisfying. I knew immediately it was something that I wanted to be a part of.
So when you started working together, sounds like there were a bunch of ideas on the table. And as we know, you currently have 2 series under production. So can you say a little bit about that process before you actually got your book deal? How did you sift through all the ideas? How did you decide what to develop? What came first?
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing that we learned about books is it takes forever, right? I think we weren't really prepared for that. Like 2016 does feel like forever ago, but that's kind of when we started on this road, really. And I remember we sold Blueberry and Pancakes, and it was like 6 months before we signed the contract. Like they're like, yes, you sold it. And we're like, okay, when do we start on it? And they're like, well, it's got to go through legal. And like, that took 6 months. And Dan and I were like, what do we, we were just kind of like, let's work on something else. And that's when we actually started working on Barb. And it's funny, it's like we had, this was totally like an idea that we were just like, we're just going to do something just for us. Like we've sold a book idea. That's amazing. It's so awesome. We have a book we get to work on. Let's just do something that's just for us, essentially. And so we signed up for Mocha, which is this awesome little comic festival in New York. And it was like 2 months before or 3 months before or something. And it cost $190. So that was our deadline and our investment. And we just started making this comic, Barb the Last Berzerker. We self-printed it. It's all black and white. And it was totally just like a passion project we did on the side. We were like animating and working during the day, and we would just, in spare moments on the train, late at night, we would just sketch in pages. And it was really liberating, really free. And we were like, it's not for a studio, it's not for anybody. We're just going to make it for our table at Mocha. But it had this great, it kind of has this great, it turned into something amazing.
Yeah, it's totally true. It's like, I remember when we were first doing Blueberry, we were like, we essentially made the whole book, and that was Erica's advice, which was, I think, really brilliant. She was like, let's just make it, and then I think we made actually, and it was kind of finished. It was like colored and like looked really nice. And then we also did like half of the second book. And I think, and Erica, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that was kind of like a useful tool in selling it. It was like, you can see the whole thing here. And like, that was totally different from what those books ended up being, but it was like, you could see all the like ingredients were working.
And you wouldn't do that for Barb. I mean, but you don't need to do that for like a long 200-page graphic novel, but for the early readers, which have actually ended up being much longer than we originally planned, because you just can't stop Dan and Jason from going crazy in there. But they were going to be shorter. And because it was their very first book, when it's your first book, you want an editor to see that you can tell a story from beginning to end in a satisfying way. And I wanted people to be really excited about it. So again, for like maybe, Mika's song with Don't Feed the Squirrels, it's long, it's chapter book, it's longer. She had already written picture books. She had already been in the children's publishing space. We sold that on a proposal, right? So she did, I think, 1 chapter completed, and then summaries. But for launching somebody for the first time in the space, I really wanted it to be a bigger splash.
So the first book deal was the Blueberry and Pancakes with First Second.
Right. So
and then while you were waiting for the contract, you started working on Barb the Last Berzerker. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so when did you go out and pitch, or did you, I'm forgetting what you told me. Did you tell me an editor saw it at Mocha and that's what happened? Or how did the second book series get sold?
Yeah, so we did Barb, and it was like just the story that we wanted to tell, you know. So it was kind of like it was this really freeing, amazing experience where we were just like kind of just did this thing on our own, and we pitched it a little bit like to some of our contacts like in the television world, and everyone was like, cool, like thanks but no thanks. You know, there was like kind of like a bunch of like rejections. And I remember we were talking to Erica too about it. We were like, you know, just like discussing and trying to figure out what to do. And then we got a call from uh Simon and Schuster, and someone over there had seen it, and there was an editor over there who was looking for this type of, like, she was looking for like a girl adventure comedy thing, and heard about it and was like, send this to me. And there's a book designer who works at Simon and Schuster who actually I went to school with, who was like a old friend from college. And so she was like, I know that guy, and like I can get in touch. And so it was kind of like that same thing where it was like, I feel like this in this story, we keep on saying the same thing, but it's like you show up, we kept on showing up and making this work, even though no one was asking for it. And then like a friend of a friend is always involved, and like, oh yeah, like I know, like I can get you in touch with that person. And it's like, that's how I feel like it keeps on kind of making its way.
Yeah, so I knew that you didn't want, like, once they had Blueberry and Pancakes, if they were going to work on something new, they needed to work on something in a different age range, because you don't want to be competing with yourself. So when they had the idea for Barb, it was like, great, it should be older. It should be for like, you know, Blueberry and Pancakes readers, older sibling. You know, I like to say like Dan and Jason are making books for the whole family, you know, so there's something for everybody. And when Simon and Schuster called, there was the option to either sort of allow them to preempt this and not go out wider, or to take it and to share it around town. But there was so much passion at Simon and Schuster. They came after it so hard. Kendra Levine had just moved from Penguin over to Simon and Schuster, and she's absolutely fantastic. She's the editorial director of that imprint. They had this friend in the art department who they would be able to work with directly. And it was really clear, you know, Justin Janna, who's the publisher, coming into the very first meeting, that they were in love with it. And, you know, you can try to sell something around town to sort of up and advance. And sometimes that's great, because sometimes the more publishers get excited, the more they'll support it on the back end. But real love, there's nothing like real love for a project. And that is what we've had at Simon & Schuster, and we've been really lucky.
I see that there's some questions in the chat, and I definitely think we should get to questions really soon. But one thing you were saying raised a question for me that I am really curious about, so I have to ask that. And then I definitely do want to ask a little bit about the whole production, time management, insanity. So the first question is, I'm curious if you could say a little bit about the difference between working with Simon and Schuster versus working with First Second at Macmillan, because I do find that different publishers have different corporate personalities, so to speak, and that, yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit of inside behind the scenes about that.
I mean, it's totally like Erica was saying, it's like, well, when you bring a book to a publisher, and we're figuring this out too, but kind of just what we've learned was you really are entering into a creative partnership, and you want to work with people that you harmonize with, that you kind of see things the same way with. I remember early on with Kendra, we were talking about our favorite movies, and I was like, I love The Little Mermaid. Like, I feel like that's such a great movie. There's so many great moments to that. And she's like, oh my gosh, I love The Little Mermaid too. She's like, Ursula totally had a relationship with Triton. Like, she'd given it all this thought. And that's something Dan and I are always doing, talking about movies and character dynamics, and like all that stuff. And if you have an editor or an art director that really gets you, it's so great, because Dan and I, you know, working in commercial, like we've worked with a million different people. And when you're in a creative relationship and you're not harmonizing with each other, it's just like you're constantly, it just doesn't, there's no magic, you know, and you really need that magic to make a book. So I think that's the relationship with the publisher is so important. And I would even say, like, more than the advance, like if they are in love with your work and really see it the way you do, and like ask them questions about like, What do you think the theme is in this story? Like really try to figure out like how they're seeing it from the inside. And if you guys line up on that kind of inner, that ground that you're standing on, it's like, it's such a better partnership because you're going to be working on these books together probably for like 3 or, I don't know, 3 years, 2 years. It's like, it's a big commitment.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally spot on. And I feel like we've been really lucky that way. It's like at First Second, we're working with like our day-to-day editor is Alex Liu, and it's funny, it's kind of like this similar to like what we're talking about with our relationship with Erica. It's like he's in it with us and we're like bouncing ideas off him and he's bouncing stuff back. And it's like, I don't know, and it has been cool like seeing kind of the different, how I think you phrased it, like corporate personalities. Like First Second is like, it feels like I don't know, they're like scrappy and energetic and like really like they're really fantastic, and they care so much about it, like they're really into it, which is amazing. And then Simon and Schuster, they have all that stuff too, but it's almost like it is a bit of a different vibe. Like one thing Simon and Schuster said to us when we first approached them with Barb is that they were like, they kind of took the black and white comic and they were like, do what you did here, but for 250 pages and in color. It was like, this is perfect. And it's like, that was kind of the first time in our career, like we've been doing this for a long time, where someone was like, do exactly what you have been doing, but more. And like, that was totally, it felt like, it just was like, it was really encouraging. And it just kind of was like, it gave us, I don't know, the like energy and the motivation to like, just go for it. We just put everything that we love into these books, and I don't know, it's been both experiences have been really cool, really awesome.
All right, I okay, last question from me, and then we are going to go to the chat, and also anybody here on the Zoom call is gonna, I'm opening up the floor. But here's the question I've been waiting to ask you guys. So you are in production right now on 2 separate complete series. And as we know with publishing, it's like you're finishing up one book while you're starting the next book, but you're not just doing that on one series, you're doing that on 2 series. And at the same time, you have to market and promote the books that have just come out. So actually, if you could tell us like when did the books come out, that would be great. How are you managing? Like, what's your workflow? What are your days like? I don't even know where to start.
Dan, you want to tell them the bad news?
Totally. So we're hanging on by a thread. Every day is like, just one day at a time.
Yeah.
No. It's funny. It's interesting because it's like, I feel like part of our thing is that we do like take like big bites and like and it's like when we're set up with like real deadlines and when there's like, when we're beholden to somebody is when we need that to get it done. You know what I mean? I feel like we kind of thrive a little bit on the insanity of it. And it's funny because part of what we're trying to figure out now too is like, well, we've got this thing going, like we've got the Blueberry and Pancake series, we got the Barb series. Like, how do we grow it? It's like, we've got more ideas. There's more drawings in us. It's like, how do we figure out how to make this thing even bigger? So it is this kind of like constant balance that we're trying to figure out between like, how do we make pages? How do we grow this thing? How do we turn this into like a real thriving, functioning business? And there's 2 of us, which I think is huge, So it's like when things get like hairy on like an outline or like a spread layout or something like that, and I feel like I can't do it, I know that I have like my best friend is with me. You know what I mean? It's like I can like always go to Jason, not only just to like help, like take a look at this, but also like to crack a joke and to remind me that like we're making comics for kids, it's like this should be fun. So it's like, I think one way that we're able to do it is because like we have each other and like we're supporting each other. And I don't know, does that kind of answer the question?
I also think like just like the nuts and bolts of like time management too. It's like if you have a pub date and say like our next Blueberry and Pancakes book, Underground Throwdown, comes out June 1st, and we had to deliver those finals like 2 months ago, I think. So it's like 6 to 8 months before it gets onto bookshelves, you have to finish your book. And kind of working backwards from that, it's like there's at least for like a colored kids comic, there's the outline, which takes like a week or two, and that's like a page for a 120 page book. It's like a page or something, and it's all the major beats, and it's the arc of the story, and it's kind of like the big things that happen. And then from there, Dan and I go into the thumbs, and thumbs, yeah, that's the cover for Underground Throwdown. But the thumbs are a really fun part, because that's where you're seeing the pictures and the words kind of commingle on the page, and you're really getting a sense of the way the comic is going to flow and the look of it. And that usually takes about a month for 100 pages with both of us. So if you're by yourself, it's probably more like closer to 6 weeks or 2 months. And that's like 9 to 5 ish. You know, sometimes you have to work late, and some days you're like, I'm out of here at 3 because you're totally burned out. But it's like you're kind of just slowly, it's not a race. You're just slowly plodding through the thumbs, and then once you send the thumbs over, you'll get some notes back. You'll adjust the thumbs, and then you kind of go into inks, and that's when the page count is locked. And you kind of know all your jokes, you know what's going to be mostly in every text bubble. And it's kind of like, we call it like the cement is starting to harden, right? It's like you're less likely to make any changes in inks. And then colors is really fun. It's kind of where the pages really come to life, I think, when you get to throw all the colors in. And I saw in the chat, like someone was wondering about the colors for Blu-ray and Pancakes. And, one of the things we're always trying to do is avoid green trees and blue skies, like just to kind of like open it up and have fun. And we're big fans of animation like SpongeBob, and those colors are so bright and alive. We definitely draw inspiration from that. And then so you finish your colors and then you send them off, and you kind of get your final pass of notes. And it's funny. It's like, I feel like Dan and I, like Dan said, we kind of bite off more than we can chew. And I feel like we were able to do it until like Barb 2, the second book of Barb was coming out like in October or something. And we were finished. You don't want two things finishing up in the same 2 weeks. It's too crazy. And the thing that happened with Barb 2 was Dan and I were working so fast that we kind of weren't tracking like costumes and stuff as closely as we needed to. Like Thunder has this thigh strap on his leg, and we would forget to draw his thigh strap, so we'd have to go back into the Photoshop. I don't know. This is just like insane, like down in the weeds. But it's like, I think there's a point in which you're working. Yeah, that's Thunder.
Like all these little straps, like keeping like where which arm has a strap. It ended up being like, and it's funny. Our editor at Simon & Schuster was totally right, but she was like, kids, like they notice this stuff. It's like they care which arm the strap is on, and she's 100% accurate. My kids are constantly like, wait a second, you know what I mean? It's like they're like little like accuracy like eagles. Yeah. But so like, yeah, we were just like plowing so hard that we weren't paying attention to that stuff, and then had to go back and like do all this extra work. So it's like, that was a huge lesson. It's like doing that work in the beginning, at the front, like locking down your character design. And it's different from animation, where it's not like it's like each drawing has to be like on model. It's like you can still be expressive and fun, but just knowing like, okay, the costumes are consistent. There's continuity, it's still alive, but there's like, you got to pay attention to continuity.
And I think too, like Dan and I are coming from animation, where you're essentially working for like AT&T or Google, or you're working for these big corporations that are kind of inherently terrifying. And it's like, if you don't make a deadline for them, it's like, you might as well just jump out the window. But in publishing, it's a little bit different. They are much kinder, and there are like hard, fast deadlines. But if you're like 2 weeks out from a deadline, which is something we should have done, I think, and you're like, I don't know if I can make it. These pages are like more complicated. Like, it's just taking me a little longer. It's like, you can totally call them up and be like, it's taking me a little longer, and that's totally okay. You're totally within your rights as an artist to say that. And that's something we learned too, I think.
Yeah, being like having open lines of communication is huge.
It's unusual too, they're saying 6 to 8 months out, but like usually it's a year that you want to deliver your finals. So already the publishers have these extremely tight deadlines for Dan and Jason, because we set out these really ambitious pub schedules where we wanted the books to come out quickly, because we all know that kids, once they eat the first book, they're ready to go right on to the second, right? It's like this whole new world of binging, where everything's available at once. And you want to, it's sort of, there's like a land grab for shelf space. It's really important to get shelf space in order for bookstores to want to take on your books, because it's just so much more likely that somebody's going to take it off the shelf if there's 3 of them there than if there's just one sandwiched between other series. So it's advantageous sometimes to publish swiftly, but it's really hard to be able to meet those deadline demands. And I don't think anybody realized how intricate and how big the world building would be in Barb. How many monsters and how many characters, and that and it's amazing. And you never want to sacrifice the work. And so Simon Schuster was great. We were hoping for one every season. We were going to do 2 a year. But maybe we're not going to do 2 a year, and that's okay, because the product is going to be better, and kids will have to wait a little bit, and everybody needs to learn patience. So it's all good.
All right, so I'm gonna start asking for questions from the crowd. I did see, I thought, Gibson, that you asked about exactly what the division of labor is between you guys, Jason and Dan. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so and I think we're kind of unique in this way, but like we both do everything. So like we write together, and then we film together, and then we ink and color together, and it's kind of like this awesome, like we've been working together for so long. It's like we've like mind melded, and it's like, we like use Google Drive like a ton. It's like when we're writing on the same doc, and Jason will go in, and yeah, we're a 2-headed troll. Or sometimes they think
Can I
like
just jump in to say that this Google Doc is amazing, because I can go in, or the editors can go in too. But now I one time shared this Google Doc with my 10-year-old because and now my kids go in all the time, right? And this one time they're like, wait, he's in Shadow Realm, but he shouldn't be Shadow Realm self. He should be regular self. You have to call them. They made a mistake. These like little editors. What an incredible experience, right? For them. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, it's so cool. I mean, we use even for our artwork. It's like for Google Slides, we'll throw up films on Google Slides, and then like you can, download like low res JPEGs, and I can mess with it and put it back up. So it has become this amazing way where like remote, we're just like working on each other's stuff all the time. And it's like, it's funny too, though, because each department, or like, part like does take kind of a different mental effort. It's like outline writing is different from thumbing. Like thumbing, I feel is almost like takes the most mental concentration, right? Because it's like you're kind of fixing some stuff, like the story is pretty much there, but you're fixing some story issues, and then you're also like doing all the layouts and cinematography and all that stuff. And then once you get to inking, it's like I feel like you can kind of like chill out a little bit more and have fun. And then coloring is just like super fun. But that's kind of like how we work together.
Yeah.
Did somebody say something?
I was just going to add to that. It's like I feel like approaching it as a team has really been helpful for me and Dan. It's like we're, I don't know, we kind of approach story like we're going on an adventure. Like we love Lord of the Rings, but it's like you decide where you want to go, and how you get there is fluid, and it kind of allows you to improv as you kind of go on this journey, rather than like feel like you have to figure everything out before you start. And I feel like that gives your stories like a vitality that you wouldn't maybe find if you kind of figured everything out before you kind of start thumbing stuff. It's like Dan was saying, it's like sometimes in the thumbs we'll have a better idea than is in the outline, and we'll change it, and we'll be like, oh, okay, but if we change this, then we'll have to change it down here. And you as long as you're aware of like the ripple effects of changing something in different parts of the story, it's like it gives your story kind of this fun vitality. Like one great example in book 1 was originally at the end, Barb tricks this giant ogre into falling into the mud, and he was going to just sink and die in the mud. And we're like, well, it was really sticky mud. The troll's gone. Barb won. But Dan and I were like, I don't think, like, I feel like Barb would go to and try to save Grom. And so it was kind of this fun thing where Dan and I are kind of telling the story, but Barb kind of jumped in and told us, like, no, I'm going to save this dude. And so we're like, okay. And so she jumps in, and it's a much more powerful ending, and it's much more in character of Barb. But it's this fun thing where it's like you're telling the story, but the story is also kind of telling you what it wants to be. And I feel like that's one of the really fun, exciting things about comics and writing in general is you kind of, you're more like an explorer, I think, than anything.
I think some of what you were saying, Jason, was leading people to ask questions about the script, because we just got 2 questions about that. So are you saying that you write an outline and then you go to thumbs? Do you not write a script at all in between?
Yeah, our outlines are pretty, I mean, we break them into chapters, and we'll have, like, as you're doing the outline, you're like, oh, it'd be cool if Witch had said this, I'll put that in, but maybe that would change. And it's really, the chapter is just kind of like, it's kind of, you find what's like each chapter has their own kind of arc to it. And the things that happen, the things that Barb finds out or is revealed to Barb, like, we know all that stuff in the order, which is really useful, because it's like, but once you see it on the page, you can kind of start to see the flow. Whoops.
Yeah, you're back. For a split second.
Sorry. But yeah, I mean, it's like you learn more about the story when you see it in thumbs. And I think part of that is because Dan and I come from animation, which is really, animation is very collaborative. Like, everybody is helping, like, animators are helping, directors are helping, compers, like, there's a bunch of people all working together on something. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, I think
so you don't do a script. The dialogue comes later when you're putting it on the page.
Yeah. It's like, we'll do chunks of dialogue, like, in our outline, but the outline is pretty structured. It's like, we kind of, like, we have all these main beats and we know what we're doing, but that stuff does change. It's this, like, mix between, like, a structure and then, like, openness to improv, where things can, like, change and mutate, so it's kind of like, it's like both, we try to keep both those things, like, alive at the same time.
I want to let people talk directly if they want to. So I'm going back up in the chat, and I saw that Andrew Nordball had some questions. There you are, Andrew. Can you unmute yourself?
I guess I could. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was going to ask about Simon and Schuster in first second, but you beat me to it. But I'm also sort of curious, because I'm studying right now the school and library market, and I'm wondering if there's special challenges or just weird idiosyncrasies to selling to those markets.
I mean, it's when you're publishing for children's in the trade market, school and library is just such a large part of that for every single book. You're not going to publish a book with Random House or Simon Schuster or any big publisher where, the puppies. The dog walker just arrived. It's very exciting. Where that's not going to be a facet of what you do. So some books might be more geared toward retail market and less toward school library, and some might be geared more toward school library and less toward retail. But I think, of course, as a teacher, I'm always considering how to make sure a book is going to have real legs in the classroom, and how to make sure that librarians there isn't going to be some reason a librarian, might not bring it in. Like, we were looking at some of the language and the dialogue, and what was it? What did she say that was a concern?
She said lame a lot. She was like, that's so lame. And I don't know, we just say it, but thinking about it from a different angle, it's like, and dope. She said dope a lot.
I was like, oh my God, I'm like, dope. I could just see. Now, I'm not saying we should censor ourselves for librarians, especially today. I mean, goodness knows what's happening, with in the country. But I'm like, I could just see somebody being like, that's dope, and it's dope drugs. I was like, oh no, does she have to say that's dope? So now she says that's rad. I'm like, that's way better. That's like a small little thing that you might consider, like larger questions about thematically, what can a teacher tap into? And how can I create supplemental materials to help educators use my books with their students? But that comes later, and it comes really with support from the publisher.
Great. Okay. Let's see. Brian Gonsar, are you here? You had a question.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello.
Hi.
I was just curious, are you still doing any animation work or working with Hornet? And I've worked with them before, really good company. But I didn't know like how when you were doing it, or if you still are, like kind of how you switch modes, between like the kind of intense timelines of work, and then kind of getting back into your creative mode to do your own projects.
Do you want to jump? You want to take that one, Dan?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, we are still working with Hornet and still have like a really good relationship with them. We did like a huge like campaign for Kroger last year where we did like, I don't know, 10 or 15 spots or something like that. And it was really challenging. It was really hard to be directing commercials and to be making, and it was kind of like we were just doing it at the same time. We were just kind of like, we're just going to do it all and, try to figure it out. But kind of the nice thing is like in the Hornet, in the animation world, sometimes there'll be just like natural gaps in work. It's like you'll finish a big job and there'll be like a 6-week gap to the next one. But we actually started just like turning down work. We started kind of saying, for the first time really this past fall, we were like, we're gonna take a step away from the commercial work and just focus on the books for a while. And that's like really opened things up for us in terms of our sanity. So it's like it's a balance, and we're like trying to constantly trying to figure it out. But we love Hornet, and like we love the animation world, and we love that whole industry and all the people that we work with there. So it's been really important to us to kind of like keep that stuff alive and to like keep all of our relationships strong.
I was reading the chat. So did I miss that? You got that? Did you tell them about the stool commercial, the stool softener? This was my favorite way to pitch Dan and Jason around town.
Erica, I was really hoping that wouldn't come up actually.
I talk about it all the time. Because
we were like doing a Colace. It was for Colace, which was a great stool softener. If you guys need it, we can recommend it. It totally works. But yeah, we did an animation that was purely like the difference between like we would do school meetings and be reading to kids, and kids are like drawing our comics and loving it, to having these meetings about stool softener, and we're like, we've got to do more books. We've got to do more books.
That's why we say like by day they're like in like a button, like a button down shirt, like all buttoned up, making stool softener commercials, and then like come 5 o'clock they rip open the shirt and underneath is like some superhero costume.
That stool softener doesn't sell itself, it's like you really got to get out there and sell that.
Okay, Ashley, you had a question. Can you unmute yourself? I don't know.
Yes, hi. I was asking, since you guys both do all sides of it, how do you keep your drawings consistent, that the characters look the same from each of you?
I think that that comes a little bit out of animation. Part of the discipline of animation is like, it's like 8 different people are drawing Mickey Mouse. So you can kind of like draw. Everyone is like, okay, I'm going to draw Mickey Mouse with those 2 big round ears. And you kind of have like what's called like a character sheet. But also Dan and I have been drawing together so long, like we can kind of like, I can go into his drawings and like fix his feet, and he'll go into my drawings and change the face a little bit and make it better. And I don't know, it's like being an old married couple or something, right? When it's like someone's cutting someone else's meat and it's like seems weird, but we just
Jason, give me that knife. I'm like,
yeah, I'm like, it's all gristle, Dan. But yeah, I mean, it's like, and the nice thing is like Dan will draw something, I'll be like, how'd you draw it? That's amazing. I love that. Or, it's kind of, it's surprising. It's fun. It's like it's really special.
I know it's corny, but like I love Jason's drawing. I mean, he is an amazing artist. Like I feel so lucky that I get to like and a writer. He's this amazing comedy writer too. It's like it does feel like this real gift that like we get to work with, you know, a friend who's also like I really admire their work so much. You know, it's awesome.
And I feel like it's an advantage too. Totally, what Dan was saying. It's like Dan is an amazing storyteller, and he's such a good drawer. He's a better drawer than I am for sure. It's nice of him to say my stuff's good, but it's like it frees up the ownership of the idea, so that it's more about the idea than who made it. In a weird way, it's like when you collaborate on something, it's like everyone is part of making this awesome, and I feel like we bring that to. Like if it's animation or books, like when we work with Simon and Schuster, it's like their ideas, it's like we're like, these are great ideas, this is making it better. And I think we're just naturally open to anybody being like, hey, what if you did this? And we're like, yeah, that's kind of cool, versus being like, no, it's got to be like that. Like if you're really rigid in your creative thinking when it comes to story or drawing, I feel like you're kind of losing out on making stuff better. And at the end of the day, Dan and I want to tell the best possible story that we can. And it's like, whoever has the idea that makes it the best or makes it better, it's like, it's all of that stuff is building towards the same thing, you know?
Janelle, are you here? Maybe I'll ask the question. I don't know if Janelle can unmute herself. But since you guys were talking about collaboration, Janelle asked, especially as an author only, what should I look for in finding the right partnership? And I guess she's speaking about looking for an artist to work with. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one thing that Jason and I talk a lot about is like the theme or like what our story is about. And like, this is something that, you know, Erica and our agents at Simon & Schuster and at First Second, like when we're collaborating with all these people, when those people come in to the kitchen and like they understand the theme and they are working towards making it as clear and entertaining and, you know, as best as possible, that's when it's like, oh, it's like we're all in this together, we're all rowing towards the same spot, you know. So it's like, I think, you know, when your collaborators understand that theme and they also feel strongly about communicating that, then it's like you're working on something, you're cooking with gas.
And you might not need an illustrator. You might be able to sell your text without one.
Erica, actually, that gets to, I think, the very next question in the chat was from Kim about how possible it is to sell just a graphic novel script. Do you have, that's a question I hear all the time. So I'm
I know,
curious
me too. And I
it.
have to admit, so, you know, I've only worked with author illustrators or like comics who are doing both. So I haven't had experience with that. But Peter Ryan, my colleague, he solely does comics and graphic novels, and he has had some success. So it is very possible. You know, editors have artists that they want to work with. They have artists that they're waiting to find the right project for. And as somebody who works with illustrators, trust me, I know I'm constantly talking to them where they'll be like, oh, I really want to work with so-and-so. I'm like, yeah, he doesn't have something that he or she's authoring right now. Go find the text for it. So there is real opportunity.
Okay. Did I miss any other questions?
Yeah, there was a good question. I think it was Robert who asked, do you guys have advice for, you know, comics in here who are not working with a partner like you guys have together? Have you had experience making books or projects just singularly? And do you have encouragement, and will you adopt him? But that's beside the they can use a third, Robert. Get on in there. Yeah, so do you have any encouragement or advice or experience?
Do you want to take this one, Jason?
I was reading the chat, so I'm sorry, I kind of spaced out. Do you want to take it? I'm sorry, my mind wandered for a second. I was just reading.
Jason and I really have been working. It's like almost our whole professional life we've been working together. So we don't have like a whole lot of experience just like working on your own. I mean, I guess my whole thing is like deadlines, like setting real goals. Like, I mean, the Mocha thing was huge for us because we like invested money in a table for Mocha. So we were like, this comic book has to be done by this date. Like it has to be written, it has to be drawn, it has to be printed. Like all these things have to happen to like hit this date. So like self-imposed deadlines, I think are huge for anybody who's making anything. But
and yeah, and going along with that too, it's like Dan and I have a little bit of a motto, which is like done, not perfect, which I mean, it's easy to be like, I just need a couple more months to really make this polished, but it's like, if it's never done, nothing is ever going to happen to it. And I remember when we were doing Barb, like we would flip through it and be like, this drawing is terrible. I hate this drawing. But it was like at the printers, and it's okay to have some terrible stuff in your work. You have to give yourself permission to like not have everything be perfect. Like perfect is a crazy ideal that no one can ever reach. So but if it's not done, nothing great will come of your work. So it's so important to finish the script, finish the thumbs, like all those things have to get finished before it's on a bookshelf, you know?
Yeah.
And
one more thing that was huge for us. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say one of like the Mocha thing was also really good for us because we had to print something physical. Like there was this physical thing that we could like take to the show and like people could buy, but also that we could then send to people. Like it's like I remember putting that in an envelope and sending it to Simon and Schuster, and it was like this that they had when we got there that they had passed around and shown all these people. It was like being able to make the thing it's huge. It almost feels like it's the last piece of the creative process. It's like it's actually not done until there's something physical that someone can hold, you know?
To answer Andrew, I did know about Barb, and I did know that Dan and Jason were planning to print it up and sell it themselves at Mocha. I think I had actually introduced Dan and Jason to Mika Song, and they ended up sharing a table at Mocha so that they could all go together. And I thought it was a great, and you know, Mika had done similar thing. I think she had also done Night Chef, which we ended up selling to Random House Graphics. So she too took, you know, had the same exact approach, like made something for Mocha and ended up becoming a book that we'll publish sometime in the future.
That was so cool, like hanging out with Mika.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying that hanging out with Mika and getting to meet Mika and like spending the weekend with her, like at the same table, was super fun. Like it was awesome.
Josh or Joshua, I don't know which Josh this is.
It's Meaton.
Oh,
hey.
Hi.
Hello. Hey, yeah, my question was, since you guys are somewhat new to the comic book world, what have you guys been doing to build an audience? And specifically, since it's you're marketing to kids and kids aren't really on social media a lot, how are you connecting with them and getting people to find your book?
You see, yeah, so it's like, it's funny. We totally have a bit of a social media presence. So it's like we're posting on Instagram as much as we can and Facebook and stuff like that. And it feels like in the past year or so, it's like it's grown through other illustrators and other people in the book business. Like it's not really kids who are like commenting on our stuff and like looking at our stuff. And there's part of me too that it's like I'm still kind of like, is this helping? Like I don't know. It's like it's a lot of work, and it's like it takes like a kind of a chunk of your day, but I guess I feel like it is. I don't know. I still can't quite tell. And I don't know, maybe Erica or Janna knows more. Like, does it really?
Janna, what do you think? I want to learn from Janna.
Oh gosh. Oh boy. I feel like social media is such a fraught question, and I'm in the same boat as you guys. I'm so sorry to say. I feel like it kind of depends on the person. I think about some of my different clients, and I mean, the one client I think of all the time when it comes to social media is Misako Rocks, because she has a big personality and she is nonstop, and she has that social media gift where she'll just go on Instagram Live and, you know, blah, 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 stuff. But then there's a lot of other people I work with who are either just don't have the time, or they're more introverted, or it just doesn't, it's not their thing. And I personally don't feel like social media is as important as some people think it is, unless you're really good at it. That's my gut instinct. I don't know. What do you think, Erica?
No, I completely agree. You have to find your way of connecting with people. So I do think it's helpful to have some sort of presence. If somebody's going to Google you or your book, they should go somewhere. And that could minimally be a website. But you know, if you like Instagram, do Instagram. If you don't like Instagram, do not do it, right? Like I hate Twitter, I try, but I don't really spend a lot of time on there. For people who don't want to do social media at all, then hopefully you're hustling in the libraries and schools. Like start local. I think starting local is key.
Yes.
And forming relationships. So you're all already here. So you all already have an instinct to meet other people, like other like-minded people, and to create community. And I think it's like, if you can continue to create community, like concentric circles, all sort of interlocking, and keep building that out, and engage in the industry even before you're published, and definitely through being published, in whatever way feels right to you. Celebrate the books you love, celebrate the bookmakers you love, reach out to people who move you, attend festivals. Like if you don't want to go to festivals or libraries or schools or bookstores, this might not be the thing for you. I'm sorry, maybe you should self-publish, and like, you know, maybe like the darkness, the intrigue will become something for you, but it's, you know, it's like less likely, because people are pounding the pavement in many different ways. It doesn't have to be social media, but like they love books and they love sharing them with children, and they want to be part of the conversation. So there's a lot of ways you can do that, but I think doing it's important, and relying on the publisher to do it for you can be very disappointing.
I think that's all totally spot on. I think that's so true. There's one thing that did occur to me that has been really awesome through social media, which is that people every week send us pictures of their kids reading Barb and Blueberry and Pancakes. And that feels so good, and it's so cool. And it's something that we never experienced in the commercial or television world. Like you never see your audience reacting to the work. And like that has been, I love it. I love it. It's so great.
It just takes, you know, you think about Peter Reynolds' book, The Dot. And if you don't know, it's the picture book. And it was one teacher who fell in love with it and created a dot day activity for his class, and went to another teacher and another teacher. And it is like nationwide now, all these teachers that do dot day. One teacher who loves your book, one librarian. You go to a bookstore to do like a reading, and one family shows up. But if you connect well with the bookseller, that bookseller could be hand selling your book nonstop. So, you know, you can't expect in the beginning, you know, crowds and crowds of people. You don't know who's in the room, and what that one person in the room, if they fall in love with your book, or if they really respect you as a bookmaker, how they can help to spread the word. And it's a process, and it takes some time. But you should be in it to win it for the long haul anyway, because nobody's coming to children's publishing as like a get rich quick scheme. You gotta love it.
I think the other part too that's really important are the indie booksellers. Like that's something that Dan and I have really reached out to a lot. And you know, we always loved bookstores, but once you have a book and you're trying to sell, like I remember the first time I watched on Booksellers is like my local bookshop, and they're awesome. And I remember going in there, and I was like, excuse me. And they're like, are you looking for a book? And they're like, actually, I wrote a book that might be in here. I was like, it was so nervous and so weird. But once you kind of get over that weirdness, it's like I've developed a relationship with them, and they're super cool. And it's fun to hang out in there and talk about, like, you know, what books they like what they're excited about. And it's like 9 out of 10 times the people in indie bookstores, and even the bigger ones like Barnes and Noble, are really big fans of books, and they're fun. It's fun just to hang out and talk about like books that they love or things they're excited about. And you can tell them the books you like, and it's totally a cool, fun thing to do. And, you know, obviously no one has all this free time, but it's super, I think, important, because they're really champions of your books. And it's so important to like reach out to them.
Well, guys, we've gone 10 minutes over our allotted time here, but this was such a great conversation. Dan and Jason and Erica, thank you so much. Actually, if everybody could unmute yourself to say thank you and goodbye. And I just want to remind
Thank you
everybody
and
that
goodbye.
yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
That's great.